Today, Parashat Ki Teitzei, welcome everybody. We're going to discuss not only one subject but several, all very applicable and very sensitive. Some examples. A fellow, Itzik, is an Israeli fellow who is in a jewelry business. There's this one house in Belgium, because that's the central of the jewelry, and his part of his family is there. Another home, it's in New York, and then the third house, it's in Israel. The question that Itzik asked is, in a situation like holidays that have more than one day in the diaspora, while in Israel they celebrate only one day, what's the proper tradition? How should he observe? That he observed the Minhagim, the customs of Israelis, Belgian community, Jewish community, or United States, or in general the diaspora versus Israel, that is celebrating 2 days versus 1 day. So that's one example of the subject we're going to discuss today, which is diverse customs. Soon you'll see the sensitivity with that. Diverse custom can go in the issue of communities, such as merging different congregations. In a situation like a congregation in New York City, who is a Russian-oriented group of people, they merge with another Sefardi group of a combination of Tunisian, Moroccan Jews, and because they consisted a different group of people, a different background, and each congregation has its own custom. So which custom should be followed? Should we say that we should follow the existing Russian congregation? Should we follow the Sephardi congregation? Another example of diverse custom, it's a couple got married. That's simple. The husband is a Sephardi Jew, the wife is Ashkenazi, and it's a well-known example. It's doing the first Passover together. The husband wants to eat rice. It's his custom. The wife comes from a home which eating rice during Passover is forbidden. And what is the halacha? What is the Jewish law pertaining to this? Which one should we follow and why? That's part of our discussion. Another discussion is that time allow is the issue of the Jewish approach to divorce. We have in this week's Torah portion the whole concept of giving a get, a separation letter, and the question is, how and which way should we go about with this? When should we pursue Shlom Bayit, meaning try to find a reconciliation, and when we should go ahead and either encourage or approve such an act of breaking families. So since it's involved with so many sensitive subjects, I would like to begin for sure with the Torah portion. The Torah portion of today, this upcoming Shabbat, Parashat Ki Teitzei, dealing with many general statements, such as Ki kach ish isha, when a man have his wife, and then the Torah said that uba elea usne'a, it turns that after a relatively short time he's no longer likes her. And the Torah said, in a certain situation, v'chatav la sefer kritut. So they can go in two ways. You can say that, like Rashi said, that he's blaming her not necessarily for serious reason, and he called it sin lead to another sin, avera goret avera. There's one sin that is called lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha, you should not hate your brother in your heart. And another one is the lashon hara, they guard your tongue, and by start speaking against your partner, it led to another one. we try to do something in many of our talk before production or before we talk, to recite what the Ari tells us, Hareini mekabel alai mitzvat aseh, I accept upon myself the positive commandment, shel ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha, love thy neighbor as thyself. We try to say it every day and every time before we sharing Torah with others, because that's the path of Torah. So, first, the Gemara in Kiddushin said the whole concept of you should love thy neighbor as yourself, meaning we don't wish to see a person being together with someone that he is really despised. Our obligation is to love, not to hate. The King Solomon said in the book of Mishlei, the book of Proverbs, Kemaim hapanim el hapanim ken lev ha'adam el ha'adam. The way that you look at the mirror, or if you go to a well or a river and you see the reflection of your face, that's the reflection that comes back to you. In other words, if you are smiling to mirror, the picture in the mirror smiles to you. So in that sense, when you have a spouse that you really don't smile, or you don't have this kind of communication, it's a reflection that goes both ways. For sure, every case and every situation we judge in a different ways, but before we go to these diverse customs in the family matters, I would like to give just a little bit broader understanding for the whole concept in Judaism in diverse customs. The first source we have is a very famous Mishnah, which I'm sure that many of you heard. It's the first Mishnah in Tractate 4 in Psachim, in chapter 4 in Psachim. And the Mishnah said as follows: Makom shena'agu la'asot melacha be'erev Pesach עושים. In the place that they have the custom to do work at the eve of Passover, people should do. Makom shena'agu shelo la'asot en עושים. The place that they have the custom not to do work at the eve of Passover, they should not do. Issue is a person that comes from a city that, for example, they have the tradition to do work, and he go to a city that they don't, or he goes from a city that is not doing work and he enter the place that they are doing. How should he integrate it with the new society? So the Mishnah concluded and it said, "Haholech mimakom." If someone comes from a city that keep leniency, or he entered the city that keep leniency, but he is stringent, he put the stringencies in both ways. Why? Because the fellow is a temporary visitor, and it's a famous phrase that said in Rome you should be in a Roman you behave like the Romans. So therefore he is part of the society, is part of the everyone else. So in that sense, if it's lechumra, if people have the minhag not to do work, it's obvious that he cannot do. But the beauty of that is, even they allow, but he has the minhag not to do, so even everybody else does work, he shouldn't do, the Mishnah said, because he keeps, since he's not a permanent resident, he's just a temporary visitor, he keeps the stringencies in both ways. So if we rules just according to this Mishnah, we solve all the problems. Why we solve all the problems? Because then the Mishnah gives us a serious and simple resolution. However, we never rule according to Mishnah only, and it's always a procedure in our halacha process that we not go just by Mishnah, we go further. There is a very famous statement that King Solomon tells us in the first chapter of Mishlei, book of Proverbs. He said, "Shma beni musar avicha," listen, my son, to the word of your father. Ve'al titosh Torah imecha. Do not throw away a custom from your parents' home. So there is a very famous Meiri that said, in the Tractate Shabbat, he said, all these beautiful minhagim, beautiful customs that we know from our bobbies, we should not disregard it easily. this is something beautiful, we should cherish, we should appreciate, etc., etc. So here is the dilemma. If you have a situation, the husband, for example, is Ashkenazi that come here from, let's say, from Maryland, and he marry a girl from Deal, New Jersey, that they are all Syrian Jews, and he is fully integrated to that community in a sense. They bought a house, they are part of that Sephardi community, he praying with them, etc. What should he do now? Should he follow the custom in that community that, for example, they allow rice and beans, why he is not originally allowed to use rice and beans on Passover or not? So, since we said that every case we have to read and judge favorably, what we're doing today is just, in a sense, opening our eyes to see the general statement of general situation. And you hear me saying many times that when it's come to a final decision, a person should consult with the rabbi when it's come to a specific case. We are just have some statement, a very general statement in that sense. Since we talk a little bit about the issue of separation or divorce, do you feel or do you think that this is a cause, a reason for a person to separate himself from his spouse? Trace the situation. The Torah said, "Ki matzaba ervat davar." If the husband found by her a matter of immorality, so Sefer HaChinuch tells us, if it's an issue between husband and wife, and he has a clear evidence that something happened in the sense of immoral, so all right, so you can provide a get, a separation in order to marry someone else. But if it's a diverse customs, and people get very angry, and each side holds strongly to hold their own ways, which way is the right way to prevail? The Torah said, "V'haya im lo timtza chen be'einav." And what happened if somehow he didn't like her? Okay? So, if we go by the old New York State's laws, for example, you can say that the whole idea of ervat davar, it's if he hire a private detective and it's a real promiscuous issues, etc. That's the case. But maybe you say that it's just, don't like her, don't want her because she have the customs to eat rice and beans, and she tried to enforce it on him. He doesn't like it, so he wants to get divorced because of that. The Torah tells us, "V'davak b'ishto," davak b'ishto meaning that they should be as one unit. So let me share with you a famous it's a Mishnah and also Talmud in Gittin, page 90, that said as follows: Beit Shammai omrim, there is a house of Shammai and a house of Hillel. Beit Shammai omrim, they're always the strictest Beit Shammai. They said, "Lo yigaresh," a person should not divorce his wife, "Ela im ken matza ba ervat davar," only if he found serious promiscuous issues, serious issue of immorality, adultery, and things like that. That's a serious reason for getting divorced. But other than that, no. And they brought a quote, Shene'emar, because it's written, if he found her something, ervat davar in general term, meaning erva is like immorality act. Beit Hillel omrim, afilu igdicha tavshilo. Beit Hillel said, even she spoiled the food. Now, let's think together. What did Beit Hillel meant? Beit Hillel meant, in our simple language, that, let's say, she never learned how to cook, or she's cooking and he doesn't like her food, right? She make a quinoa and he said that it's great, or he doesn't like her, or he likes someone else, or whatever it is. Or, in our case, the husband and wife in Passover, this one eating rice and bean on Passover. This one said it's forbidden. This one is kneidach. This said that kneidach is forbidden. You're crazy. And it's a big hit. And you have to cut. You can't go in both ways. There is a very famous statement that the great leader of American Jewry in the past generation, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, rules, and it's a beautiful svara, it's a beautiful mindset. It's just beside of the halachot that we study. He said, and I said it first in Hebrew and then translated to English, שלא יהיו שני אנשים מסובין על שולחן אחד. האסור לזה מותר לזה, והמותר לזה אסור לזה. You cannot have two people sitting around the table. I'm eating this, you're not eating this. I'm eating this, you're not eating this. I allow a Pat Israel, you're not allow Pat Israel. I drink OUD, you're drinking only Chalav Israel. It's interesting and nice maybe with friends and neighbors, but this is untenable situation when you have it as a husband and wife. Can you imagine two people under one roof and one said I go this way and the other one that way? It can be. So far what we enter here is a very serious and sensitive domain, that we ask a question, which way should we prevail? And soon you see the application not only in a personal matter, it can go a broader picture, which is in emerging communities and they have different customs, or in a sense of visitors and they have different traditions. So if you follow the Beit Hillel teaching, they said another interesting statement. Beit Hillel said, "Afilu matzah na'a hemena," which again we need to understand that. Beit Hillel hold that even he has someone that is much nicer and beautiful than her, can be external, can be character. So you tell me, let's think together in the eye of the modern life, 2012. Is that a foundation for divorce? Is that a sufficient reason to say that that's the reason to separate? Someone sent me a, YouTubes. You have emails, you get all endless emails from so many people. So one of them was a YouTube that's called Storybook Romance Become a Bitter Divorce. It's the ABC News. Put a clip for like 5 minutes of unbelievable story of a fellow, Catholic fellow, that did kickboxing, and he met a Jewish girl, and he claimed that she forced him to conversion, which again in every story is the two sides. And they have a girl together. He came back from Afghanistan, they have a girl together, but anyway it turned to be a holy war between them over that child, between baptize the child and taking the child to Jewish education. And it all started with the point that they have this type of feelings that since they are from two different perspectives of the world, he will go to the extremes. So what we try to prove is just example of so many, that when it turned to the time of separation, of divorce, there is all kind of variation and explanations and pretext. So it's just example of one of so many painful situations that we need to handle. What's the Jewish perspective? What we said when we said that we have to stick to our Mנהגים, to our tradition, and we cannot be compromisable. And when we said that let's find some way to get together and reconcile those issues. So first, let's deal with the personal matter. Personal matter, the Talmud said there, Rabbi Yehuda hold, Im saneita shaleach. If you really get to the point that you do not like her, we don't expecting soulmate, meaning that's for everlasting. If it's a situation that the person really feel that is no life and is some type of hatred between them, you should not stay in that situation. Rabbi Yochanan said, Tsanui HaMeshalech. Rabbi Yochanan hold it and he have a different twist. And he said that in our language, the Almighty don't like or hates the one who getting divorced for a small, minute reasons. And the Gemara asks a question, what's the difference between the two great rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yochanan? And the answer, ha-bezivug rishon, ha-bezivug sheni. It's a difference between the first marriage and the second. So, what does that mean? I'm not going to hold the discussion, just give you the abbreviation. Rabbi Eliezer said that the first marriage, if it's a breakup, first marriage, especially if it's involved children, if it's involved other painful subject, he called it mizbeach boche alav. In that sense, again, it's in our allegorical language, the altar, the holy altar, meaning the time that it was an offering and people brought the offering to God. So he said the altar cry for that person. Why? Because it's written in the book of Malachi. They said the Eshet Nurim, the women that you know from, in our language, from the teenager year, from the high school or college together, etc. Asher bagadet ba, Eshet Beitcha, that the one that used to be your partner for life, now it's such a separation. So Sefer HaChinuch explained to us, and he said that if you have a promiscuous matter, if it is a very serious reason, then it's different. But we have always to keep the clear balance to understand when is a disagreements, when is in one hand you have this covenant, you have under the chuppah of ketubah, of marriage covenant. On the other hand, there is all kind of situations. Should we say that the reason not to eat rice and bean and Passover is that sufficient to get separated or to divorce? I think, without going further, it's absolutely obvious that that should not be the cause. The first point of discussion is that what's the real differentiate between primary someone who's a permanently resident versus a temporary visitor? If that couple come to deal New Jersey as a temporary resident, then obviously, as Rabbi Moshe Weisblum tells us, that she should go by his traditions, and even the community there is Assyrian Jews, but since she married to him and he is Ashkenazi, so they're just a visitor, and she should keep the way that he keep in his house. But what happened the opposite way? The opposite way, there is a concept that is called a vow. If you do something 3 times, it's considering some form of vow. So if he moved permanently to Deal, New Jersey, what he needs to do, he needs basically to go before the Beit Din and annul the vow in order for him to be able to eat rice and bean in the all integrated community of Syrians that they're all eating rice and beans. So we here hold a very important concept that it's called Shlom Bayit, which means we try very hard to make peace in a house. So that's one simple point of discussion. But if we go further with that, we have to differentiate between establishing customs and personal stringencies, personal chumrah. For example, Rabbi Feinstein ruled in several places, such as Even HaEzer, Chelek in the 12, or 159, chapter 59, he holds that if there is something that is called personal stringencies, such as the husband wants his wife to wear extra hat, or he said even there is an Eruv in a community, I don't want you to carry anything, or all kind of things that is not established minhag in a community, is just want her he want to impose on her some personal extra stringencies. Rabbi Feinstein said that she doesn't need to follow. In other words, even with all the idea of she should follow the husband that Rabbi Feinstein said, in Orach Chaim, Siman 158, still he holds that if when it's come to a personal chumrah, he cannot impose it on her. Now, with that said, here we see the sensitive point with all of that. We are now getting close to the high holidays, the days of awe. And we ask God to judge us favorably. And in a sense, God said to us, measure for measure. The way that you treated your fellow, your spouse, that's the way you treated your fellow man, that's the way I'm going to treat you. And since we should judge others favorably, the Mishnah tells us in Avot, wherever Tuv Yerushalayim, the text said that we should look at the good in Yerushalayim. So therefore, the Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah, Kol ha'ma'avir al midotav, if someone overcome his anger, his bad trait, ma'avirim lo al kol psha'av, the Almighty also forgive for his sin. In other words, it's a reflection. The same way as we said the mirror, you look at the mirror reflected to you. But the way that you reflected to your fellow, that's in a sense God going to reflect to your request upon the day of judgment. In a sense, if you sacrifice yourself for your partner, because it's always two sides in every story, he will do it for us as well. If you look at the story of Adam and Eve, beginning of Genesis. So if you read carefully the text, Adam gave Eve part of his body, the rib, he gave to her in that sense. The procedure, he gave her. Because she became his corresponding helper. So Rabbi Soloveitchik said, don't you ever think that you are the only one who sacrificed something. It's always two sides that sacrifice. And the Gemara tells us in the Megillah, Milah besela. Watch your words, be careful what you said and how you express yourself. The Gemara in Chulin tells us that the world survives if a person controls himself, especially at a time like anger. You are together, is that sufficient reason to separate? Is that sufficient reason to fight over these type of things? Because the center of life is to have this type of reconciliation. The key in Judaism is to make peace, to make Shlom Bayit. So here's the point. If it's a diverse customs, it's not sufficient reason to approve any type of divorce. If it's a immoral issues, that's a different story. But if it's a diverse customs, it's not sufficient reason. So how you reconcile it? So what we said so far, we said that if it's a situation that they are temporary visitors, then they have to go by the original tradition, the original Minhagim. If they are permanent resident, so they have to make the way that it's a permanent resident integrated with the community. Example, who asked that question and where does it come to be in a Jewish, rabbinic response? The first one that deal with that is the Shelot V'Tshuvot Tashbetz. I saw it in the Tashbetz and then I heard it from several Rabbanim. I heard it from Rabbi Vilalem and then I heard it from Rabbi Friend in Israel. So I owe a gratitude to all my teachers and rabbis that also pointed out and expanded on that point. But what this response speaks, it's about a situation in the 14th century when Jewish people were persecuted. And it was a group of Jews that live in the island of Majorca. And because it was a tremendous persecution, they fled to Algeria. So, again, what happened to our people? In one hand, we are facing the fulfillment of the great prophecy that Hosea said, that v'nikbetzu kol hayamim yachdav ki gadol yom Yisrael. It will be a time that all the Jewish people will gather together, and you have families of Sephardim and Ashkenazim and people of different background, and it's a time that you see the ingathering of all the Jews from four corners of the world and go to a land of Israel and go and integrate it as a family. But it's set by itself an own set of problems. Since we do not have the temple, we don't have one tradition, and we scattered for 2,000 years. So here it was the 14th century first recorded responsa. They came to the leader of the Jewish community that was named is Rabbi Shimon ben Tzemach. The abbreviation of his name is the responsa called Tashbetz, Teshuvot responsa of Shimon ben Tzemach. And the Tashbetz was asked that question. What the question he asked? He says, you have a community established that you are the leader in Algeria, Sephardi community. You have another community that came here from the island of the Majorca. Now, they, husband and wife that married, which way prevail? So he said we have to go both ways by the way of the, first and foremost, by the way of the community. Meaning, the community in Algeria is the permanent. The community of the Majorca, they move permanently to be in Algeria. And therefore, they have to integrate it as one community. However, if it's a husband and wife, we said earlier that the whole idea of two people sitting around the table cannot have different minhagim. There is one place in the Talmud that says that you can have two rabbinical courts in one city, and the one can have different rules for different communities. But here is a situation of husband and wife. So he said if it's a husband and wife, we should go by the husband. Why? Because basically he is in the one, in a sense, who in charge for the education of the house, who set the tone as far as the education. But again, that was 14th century. In our times, we keep saying that each case is different. Each case needs to judge individually. In general, we go by the husband, but as we said earlier, there are situations go the other way around. For example, in a deal New Jersey situation, that the entire or almost the entire community was Sephardim. So again, that's not a sufficient reason to break a family, obviously. So again, we ask a question within balance. When we encourage get a separation, when we encourage Shlom Bayit and discourage get. What we said, for sure, number one, that each case is different. But even each case is different, we should understand that we divided between ervat davar, meaning a really immoral, promiscuous issues, or we talk about just Shalom Bayit, find the reconciliation, the proper way to reconcile between the two, so it will be together. Now, in conclusion, there are several conclusions we get out of this learning. First of all, we want to avoid tragedy. We don't want to create a situation in the family that you have husband and wife sitting around the table. Imagine that they have children around, and she starts challenging and contradicting everything he said. And he said, we should do this way, and she said, you should do that way. He asked his children to sit around the table. She said, the children, you can come and do whatever you want. If he said one thing, she said another thing. That cannot go on. That's tragedy, because it's basically leading to another generation that follow the same footsteps. So, in one hand, we encourage soulmates, we encourage Shalom Bayit, we encourage peace in the house. But we don't want a person to feel that he is basically locked himself forever in one situation, that he is stuck and he cannot move. So, therefore, in one hand, we try to go by the Shalom Bayit and the Chesed Neuraich, the wife that they are together, etc., etc. On the other hand, if she is, or vice versa, I'm using just as an example, it can go in many different ways. If it's two painful relationships, if one person is way too demanding, and she can come before the rabbinical court and she said that by all means the life is impossible, and vice versa. So because of the severity, we have to judge each situation separately. We, in general, especially in the most modern time, we not, I will say this, 40 years ago I recall Batei Din in Israel that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they're very much schlepping cases and did things in order to make Shalom Bayit. Today in the modern world, they realize in that sense that if it's an ongoing tragedy, if it's a too demanding spouse, if it's a too painful, it's a too much going on, and the level of the unhappiness and hatred is so high, then not only in the case of adultery or promiscuous issues, but even in the sense of ervat davar, by disliking each other. He is overweight, he is screaming all the time, he is impossible, etc., etc. I saw him doing so and so and so, I saw her, etc. There are many cases that it's a serious matter that rabbis should not delay it forever in the sense of try to get Shalom Bayit. So what we learned so far today? We learned several things. First and foremost is the whole concept of diverse custom. Diverse custom when it's come to communities. So if a fellow is a temporary visitor, let's say if the fellow, his main house is in Belgium, and he's a short visitor in Israel, short visitor in America, so he needs to observe 2 days. Why? Because that's his permanent resident. If he's permanent resident in Israel and he visitor even most of the year elsewhere, so in one hand is a concept of mar'i time, he should not show everybody that he can do things in the second day. On the other hand, he needs to observe only the custom that he is a permanent resident. When it's come to integrating a different communities, so it's a very simple what the previous generation said, like Rabbi Feinstein and others who said that in general we should strive for Shalom Bayit, to make peace between two communities. When is a permanent community? Czechoslovakia, for example, they have 700 years history of community, that's a established community. But since so many leaders of this country call this country, United States of America, a land of immigrants, if it's called a land of immigrants, the rabbis rules there is no such a thing, established communities. So therefore, if you have a Russian and Sefardi merging, they have to find some way to reconcile. Each party give something in order to make it happen in between them. Each party give up something in order to make it happen, because there is no such a thing established minhag in the United States. When it's come to a husband and wife, we said as follows. We said we strive for Shalom Bayit. We strive to make peace in the house. Food and things like that should not be the cause of breaking family, God forbid. In general, we rule that we go by the husband. But again, there are certain cases that we can find a way to do Shalom Bayit. But if it's a much serious issues, furthermore than just diverse customs, it's go like I told you earlier, that painful YouTube I got from ABC News, that all this issue of getting out of control the relationship, it became a holy war, then we treat it very differently. And we said in that case that yes, there are situations that not only we say that they should get divorced, and we even encourage in a certain situation, not only in promiscuous situations. So my blessing and wishes, since we get close to the time of the days of oaths and the high holidays, we are here in the America, the quintessential place that Jews feel so comfortable, and we wish that they continue for the Jewish people to feel, in a sense, comfortable. There's no other place that treated the Jews so far the way that the United States of America. We should be very grateful for that. And we should remember that our home, our place is Eretz Israel, meaning that the land of Israel, it's not just our land, but any attack on our land, God forbid, is attack on us, not only the community, but also individually. We should understand that if we appear before God on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we ask Him, please God, grant me a new year of good life. That's the Avinu Malkeinu, Kodveinu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim, God inscribed and sealed us in the book of good life. That's something that every single person who attends services asks. And in our language, God will answer and said, what do you do in order to deserve it? So if a person go an extra mile in his personal relationship, when they come to the community, when it's come to other fellow men, he follow the proper balance and he go an extra mile, then hopefully the Almighty will grant us not only a good year, but a year, as we said, sweet year, year of success, year of good health, year of a good economy, and year that our wishes to see a real Yiddish nachas, real joy from our future generation and great-grand generation, the Dor Vador will carry on, and let us say Amen.
la la